Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyid al-Anbiya wal-Mursaleen. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna bifadlik ilman wa ta'aliman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. Okay, so we're not going to have a whole introduction to Imam Bukhari. Um, it'd be wonderful, it'd be nice, but we don't have time. We want to kind of get into the substance. But if anybody who could remind me um, about something about this book and about the contents of this book and the relative authenticity of the contents of this book. So if those of you who listen to the recording or who were part of the previous course or maybe familiar with the methodology of the hadith scholars.
All the contents are not sahih. They're like,
Good. So therefore, half of it is useless.
no, 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 no. Because,
So that doesn't make sense. So it's
yeah,
not correct. It's incorrect, but therefore it's still useful. How does that make sense, Yusuf Asghar?
because you take it for the actual like wording of it, the lesson that it, like, the lesson of it. You don't take it as something for like fiqh or anything
Okay.
because it's for adab.
Okay, so we're talking about general ethics. When it comes to general ethics, as Aban says, the stringent standards for the narrations for this book are reduced. Okay, so when you say Bukhari, you say which book? You say Sahih al-Bukhari, or do you mean al-Adab al-Mufrad, or do you mean this book, or do you mean that book? So when you say a hadith is narrated by Bukhari, you usually mean in Sahih al-Bukhari, which is a very, very high level of Sahih, whereas this is a lower level. Okay, and so what does that tell us then? It tells us a very important principle, underline the word very important, is that a weak hadith is useful. In our times, frequently we're going to hear, but that hadith is weak. Why are you sharing it? Well, that hadith is weak. It's pointless. That's wrong, right? We often equate weak with incorrect. Weak means I'm not 100% sure, or even 80% sure, or even 70% sure that the Prophet said it. And maybe 50, 60% sure that the Prophet said it. Is it useful? It's useful, right? It's useful. But can I use it in halal haram by default? The answer is no, by default. In reality, that's a whole discussion that we'll have another time. Okay. And so we will point some out here and there, inshallah ta'ala. And for those who wish to right now, you can look at some examples. I'm just looking at a note that I put in this book long time ago to demonstrate this whole concept. Um, so I said, for example, here, I said, أمثلة, what is it? الحديث الضعيف. I gave a whole lot of examples. I just want to give an example here, number 7, hadith number 8, before we get onto the book. I don't really want to linger too long on these things. The hadith number 7, sorry. Hadith number 7. Correct? Okay. So just as an example here, hadith number 7. So does everyone have the PDF that I shared? Where is it? Let me post it again so everybody else can see it who's not seen it. It should all be in. If you go into Zoom info, you should see it. I've put the textbook. There's a text which you can buy the translation there from Mecca Books, and also Surat al-Mustaqim al-Adab al-Mufrad there, the PDF. Can everybody see that in the course info? I know half of you know Arabic and half of you don't, which is fine. Right? Can everyone just find Hadith number 7?
Yes, sure.
Everyone has it?
Yes. Yes.
Mustafa, you have it open? Sister Ilma, or I'm not sure if that's a sister or brother, forgive me. Um, Samir, you have it open, right?
Yes.
Great, you got it open. Okay. So it says, and so now Imam Bukhari is speaking. It says, حدثنا al-Hajjaj. This is my source. قال حدثنا Hamad ibn Salama. So this is a narrator that you will never find in Bukhari, in Sahih al-Bukhari. Because Sahih al-Bukhari is, we said, the Ferraris, right? The Ferrari and Lamborghini of hadiths. So you won't even find this narrator there. Okay, he's not even there. And Sulaiman at-Taymi and Sa'id al-Qaisi and Ibn Abbas قال. So he's quoting Ibn Abbas. He said that Ibn Abbas said. So this is not even a hadith then, is it? Because it says Ibn Abbas said. So anyway, it's interesting. So, but anyway, it says ما من مسلم له والدان مسلمان يصبح إليهما محتسبا إلا فتح الله له بابين يعني من الجنة وإن كان واحدا فواحد. So he says there's not a single Muslim who has two parents, mother and father, who are Muslims, and then enters the morning, right, being good to them, or muhtasiban meaning intending to do good to them. إلا فتح له الله بابين يعني من الجنة. So either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens two doors of Jannah for them. And if he just has one parent, then one door. وإن أغضب أحدهما, if he annoys one of them, لم يرضى الله عنه. Allah is not happy with him. حتى يرضى عنه, until that parent is happy with him. Okay? قيل, and it was said, وإن ظلماه, even if those two parents are wrong to him, قال وإن ظلماه, said yes, even if he wrongs them. And so here, this hadith, we say these are by default the words of the Prophet, the words of Ibn Abbas, but Ibn Abbas can't make things up like this, right? It's not possible for Ibn Abbas to kind of talk about what Allah does and what Allah doesn't do, and so this is what we call mawquf marfu' hukman, right? Because he's talking about something that he couldn't know through his own ijtihad, he must be the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So now we look at this hadith just as an idea, right? Obviously it tells us how important it is to be good to our parents, right? And we'll talk about that. But just as a methodology, this hadith, okay, my editor, it says فيه سعيد القيسي لم يعرف إلا من شيخه عبد الله بن عباس ومن تلميذه التيمي, right? And this hadith is found in also in Bayhaqi's Shu'ab al-Iman. So what does it tell us? Hadiths of this ilk that are found, for example, Imam al-Bayhaqi, who comes much later after Imam Bukhari, he'll mention a hadith like this on, again, about what it means to be a good Muslim and how to make your tree of your faith grow as the Shu'ab al-Iman. And a book like this is going to mention weak hadith. This hadith is weak. Okay, we don't even know who this person is, right? And so, okay, and so that's an example of it. And so then I asked somebody like Yusuf Asghar, is that a problem? He says, no. We already know this general concept. This has helped me understand it more, right? Help me understand it more, right? And so this is how we deal with these kind of hadiths. They're speaking about these kind of things. Even if it's weak, it's not relevant, right? It's not relevant. So it doesn't matter, right? Should you use this in a khutbah? Not necessarily, because some people don't understand the methodology and might get upset depending on who you're talking to. But in general, this is how the ulama work. Okay? And so the way that people work today is like, oh, brother, that's not sahih, that's haram, don't mention it. That's a new system. Okay? And traditionally, scholars of the past, when they're talking about these kind of things, they would mention all sorts of hadiths, right? So it's not a problem, inshallah. Okay, so that's just a methodology, okay? So I'm just going to be using the Arabic, but I'm trusting that everybody's following with the English. Okay? Okay. So the beginning of the text that we see, it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, with the name of Allah, with the help of Allah, with the concern of Allah, and the barakah of Allah's name, the most merciful and compassionate. He says, Babu qawlihi ta'ala, wa wassayna al-insana biwalidayhi ihsana. He says, chapter concerning Allah's saying, and we have enjoined upon man to be good to his parents. Okay, to be good to his parents. He says, أخبرنا أبو نصر أحمد بن محمد بن محمد بن الحسن محمد so كسرة here محمد بن الحسن بن حامد بن هارون بن عبد الجبار البخاري المعروف بابن التنازكي قراءة عليه وأقر به وقدم عليها حاجا في صفر سنة 70 و300. So this manuscript is beginning with a chain of transmission back all the way back to Imam Bukhari, right? So this is in the year سنة 70 و300 in 370. So this is 100 years after Imam Bukhari. قال أبو الخير أحمد بن محمد بن الجليل بن خالد بن الحريث البخاري الكرماني أو الكرماني in Iran كرماني العبقسي البزار سنة 22 و300. Right? So his sheikh had narrated this whole book to him in the year 322. قال حدثنا أبو عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل بن إبراهيم ابن المغيرة بن الأحنف ابن الجعفة البخاري. Okay, with his chain transmission. So this is Imam Bukhari himself. What is his name? His name is Muhammad ibn Ismail. Right, Imam Bukhari's name is Muhammad ibn Ismail. Frequently we'll hear Qala Muhammad ibn Ismail, etc. So that's how the chain transmission, that's how the book, the manuscript exists. قال حدثنا أبو الوليد قال حدثنا شعبة قال الوليد بن عيزار أخبرني قال سمعت أبا عمرو الشيباني يقول حدثنا صاحب هذه الدار وأومى بيده إلى دار عبد الله قال سألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أي العمل أحب إلى الله. So he says, with his chain back to, he says, the owner of this house, and he referred to the house of Abdullah. Which Abdullah is this? Presumably Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Usually we say Abdullah, we mean Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. I'm not sure. Let's say anyway. Inshallah, we'll try and find out. But usually we say Abdullah by default. That means Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And he says in Kufa, and Abdullah Mas'ud was in Kufa. Allahu A'lam. Anyway, so he says, he said, سألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, I asked the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, أي العمل أحب إلى الله عز وجل? Which acts are most beloved to Allah, mighty and majestic? قال الصلاة على وقتها, praying on time. قال ثم أي, and then which thing? قال بر الوالدين. Okay, it does not say obedience to parents, it says wide, expansive, comprehensive kindness and goodness towards parents. Okay, from the word bar. Bar means the earth, right? How it spreads out. So it means sometimes being their friend, sometimes being their servant, sometimes being their etc. Right? Jazakumullah khair. Appreciate it, Aman. Okay, birrul walidain. So he specifically mentions Abdullah Mas'ud. So birrul walidain means being good to your parents. Wabil walidaini ihsana. Right? وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. So in the Quran, it does not explicitly tell us to obey our parents. It tells us to be good to our parents. Okay, so this is a fiqh issue. When you have questions of do I have to obey my father? Do I have to obey my mother? Who should I obey? This is a fiqh discussion, and we're talking about the general thing. So in fiqh, you need to go to faqih. Sheikh, am I obliged to am I obliged to do this or not? My dad told me this, my mom told me this, or I don't think it's a good idea, but my dad's telling me. That's a fiqh discussion. Okay, here we're talking about being genuinely good to them, right? Laterally good to them, spreading out in different ways. Okay. قلت ثم أي, what is best after that? ثم قال ثم الجهاد في سبيل الله, and then being, and so just in the Shafi school at least, just so that we can just point that out, what does it mean to obey your parents in the Shafi school? It's very limited in the Shafi school. Okay, so the next thing is in jihad fi sabilillah, and so when it means obeying your parents, or what is uquq al-walidain, what is disobedience to the parents, it is basically three things. Okay, it's three things. Number one, moving away from them, traveling away from them for no particular reason. You're not going for work and you're not going for education. You just don't want to live next to them, right? And there's no harm, right? Let's say, for example, your parents are literally causing you to have a mental breakdown. That's something else. But I just don't want to live next to my parents because they're kind of annoying. I just don't live next to my parents because it's uncool, right? But so you're traveling for work, that's halal, you can do that. You're traveling for education, that's halal, you can do that. But traveling, leaving them for no particular reason against their will, right? This is not permissible in the Shafi school. That's A. And then B, doing something that is rude to them. So that could be something that's haram or not haram, right? And that's culturally relative, something that's rude, right? So for example, you come back from a journey, you go home and just walk to your room and go to sleep. Where's the hello? Where's the goodbye? Where's the salam alaikum? Where was I missed you? Where is that you okay? What's going on, right? So it's culturally relative. It depends on the relationship and how things are, etc. But obviously includes anything that's haram, harming them, using bad language towards them. May Allah protect us all, right? Or physical violence or something like that. May Allah protect us, right? But anything that would normally hurt them, right? So that could be, let's say, for example, it's normal in your culture that you call your mother once a week or once every day, and then you didn't do it, right? And so that varies with place and time. Okay, so traveling away and then doing something that risks your life, right, without their permission. So I want to go bungee jumping. My mom says no. I want to do jihad, and it's not obligatory for me. I'm not in the army, and there are enough soldiers. Why do you need to go specifically? Because I want to go and die as a shaheed. Yeah, but mom says no. Okay, you can't do that. Right? Driving without a seatbelt on. Your mom says no. Don't do that. Right? It might be haram in itself, but it'd be doubly haram. Your mom says don't do bungee jumping. I don't know, something that's dangerous. You cannot do that against your parents' will. Okay, so those are those three things. So in the Shafi school, for example, your parents say get married or don't get married. We're not obliged to do that. Or study medicine or don't study medicine. You're not obliged to do that in the Shafi school. So it's very interesting though that Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, right, one of the great late authorities in the Shafi school, in his fatwa, he says, this is what they say technically. This is the Shafi school technically. However, because Ibn Hajar understands the deen, he's like, be very, very careful of ever going against their will. And if you're going to go against their will, go and ask somebody who is Rabbani, somebody who is like deeply religious, and say, Sheikh, I know technically speaking, I don't have to listen to my dad on this, but what would you do? Because it's not a joke, right? And so we should be very, very careful. But do you have to obey your parents to your own detriment? No. So you are literally going through a psychological breakdown, and your parents are telling you have to stay here with me. Why are you leaving me? It's like, I'm going insane, literally, right? You don't have to do that. You don't have to stay with them if you're literally going insane, right? And you're taking medication because of something like that, right? Or whatever it is. Okay. Technically speaking means qada. No, it doesn't mean qada'an. No, it means diyanatan. Diyanatan. Right? So I'm not talking about court. The court can't. This is not a court issue to begin with. The court issue would only be nafaqa, right? The court issue would be, are you supporting them or not? Are you obliged or not? That's only a court issue. Otherwise, none of these things are court issues. Okay. ثم أي قال ثم الجهاد في سبيل الله, and then fighting in the way of Allah. قال حدثني بهن, he told me those things. ولو ازددته, ولو استزدته لزادني. Had I asked him to continue the list, he would have continued. Right? And notice it here says حديث صحيح أخرجه المصنف في الصحيح. Okay, so it says this hadith is sahih. The author himself, Imam Bukhari, he put it in his book, As-Sahih Bukhari. Okay, so this hadith is exactly the same hadith that you find in Sahih Bukhari, and it's on that level. But not all hadiths are on that level. Hadith number 2. حدثنا آدم قال حدثنا شعبة قال حدثنا يعلى بن عطاء عن أبيه عن عبد الله بن عمر قال رضا الرب في رضا الوالد وسخط الرب في سخط الوالد. Right? He said, the contentment of the Lord is found in the contentment of the parent, and the anger of the Lord is found in the anger of the parent. And he mentions here that this hadith is most likely the words of Abdullah ibn Umar, not a hadith. So here it says the words Abdullah ibn Umar said, right? And it's possible as well that the Prophet said this. Right, so other people have mentioned it as the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, Babu birril ummi. He says the chapter of comprehensive and widespreading goodness to the mother. Notice what that means. It doesn't mean obeying your mother. It means comprehensive goodness, right? Again, there's sometimes you are a child, and sometimes you are like a sibling, and sometimes you are like a parent. There are certain times, right? Here, Mustafa, for example, Musana, they're here, and they might be getting to a stage, they might remember a stage when they were little kids, right? And their mother said, listen, and they obeyed. As they get older, sometimes they might be somewhat child and somewhat sibling, because they are they're adults now, right? And there'll be a time where they might say, oh my God, like mom and dad, they're not what they used to be. They don't have that strength, the emotional strength, the physical strength. And you are almost your parents, that you are almost become the parents of your children, of your parents, right? So there's different kind of things. People need different things at different times. Sometimes they need a joke. Sometimes they need you to cooperate. Sometimes they need you to study. Sometimes they need you to work your life out. Sometimes they just need reassurance, right? They're worried about your marriage and like, how are you doing? They just need to know that you're doing things properly, right? باب بر الأم. حدثنا أبو عاصم عن بهز بن حكيم عن أبيه عن جده. Where's Abana? You hear Aban?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what do you see when you see this? بهز ibn Hakim عن أبيه عن جده. What kind of hadith is this?
It's not a strong hadith, right? There's a lot of discussion on these guys.
Good, right?
And
So this is a classic chain that is either Hasan or Da'if, right? A classic chain. Bahaz ibn Hakim an abihi an jaddihi. So this is a scholar narrating from his father, from his grandfather, right? Most likely a book, right? Most likely it's a book. So his grandfather wrote a hadith book, okay? Read it to his son, and read it to the next generation. And then there might be issues here. There's a whole discussion. Is it Hasan or is it Da'if? But it's definitely not Sahih. You will not find a hadith like this in Sahih Bukhari, because it's a different kind of book. Is it useless? It's not useless. No, that is a different thing. قلت يا رسول الله من أبر. So there's abir and abar. I think there's a whole discussion here about which is what, abar or abir. There's a slightly different meaning. Anyway. قلت يا رسول الله من أبر. Who should I be good towards? قال أمك. قلت من أبر. قال أمك. قلت من أبر. قال أمك. ثم قلت من أبر. قال أباك. ثم الأقرب فالأقرب. Sorry. Right? So a hadith mentions, so who should I be good towards? Say your mother. Who should I be good towards? Your mother. Who should I be good towards? Your mother. Who should I be good towards? Your father. And then who? Al-Aqrab fal-Aqrab. Right? The person who's closest and closest. And then, I'm not sure if you're going to specifically mention, but there are hadiths, I'm not sure if it's going to come here, but it's going to specifically mentioning the importance of being good to your aunt, your maternal aunt. right? So the maternal aunt, the hadith mentions that the maternal aunt is on the level of the mother. So she has a very, very special person in your eyes, and you should be very careful about her. Okay. حدثنا سعيد بن أبي مريم قال أخبرنا محمد بن جعفر بن أبي كثير قال أخبرني زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار عن ابن عباس أنه أتاه رجل فقال إني خطبت امرأة فأبت أن تنكحني وخطبها غيري فأحبت أن تنكحه فغرت عليها فقتلتها فهل لي من توبة. Okay, so he said a man came to Ibn Abbas and said, I proposed to a woman and she refused to marry me. And then another man proposed to her and she wanted to marry him. فغرت, so I became jealous, and an unhealthy jealousy, right? فقتلتها, so I killed her. فهل لي من توبة, can I possibly make توبة? قال أمك أمك حية, he says, is your mother still alive? Sorry, yeah. Is your mother still alive? قال لا. قال تب إلى الله عز وجل وتقرب إليه ما استطعت. He said, repent to Allah, most high and majestic, and draw close to him as much as you can. فذهبت فسألت ابن عباس لما سألته عن حياة أمه. He said, why did you ask him about his mother? قال إني لا أعلم عملا أقرب إلى الله عز وجل من بر الوالدة. He says, because I can't think about anything that is more close to Allah, that it is more noble in Allah's eyes than being good to one's mother. Right? So does that mean you can go around killing people and just being nice to your mum?
No.
No.
Okay, so what does it mean then?
If at all one falls to a major sin, this is one of the ways to get tawbah.
Good. So, but what do you have to do if you do a major sin that involves someone else's rights?
Get their forgiveness.
You have to get their forgiveness. So you killed a woman, you have to go to the family and say, listen, I killed your daughter. Do you want to have me executed? Or would you like me to pay the blood money, or will you forgive me? And they say, it's okay, we've forgiven you. Or no, we want to have you to be executed, right? So you can't just take this hadith and say, oh, what did he do? He just did this. So we're saying, assuming that A, he made tawbah, and B, he went to the family or the authorities said, here I am the murderer. I murdered this woman, right? You can't just disappear, right? You stole some money, you give the money back. You don't have to give the money back in public, or you can do it, what's it called? In a discreet way without them knowing, but the money has to go back, right? But now it's like, okay, how can I kind of guarantee this tawbah by doing good deeds? He says, be good to your mother, right? And so do whatever you can to do good things, right? And so whenever and somebody else is involved, you have to get their permission. They mentioned with riba that if they didn't know, you don't have to go and say, hey, bro, I made riba about you the other day. And I said this and this and this and this and this. Really sorry. Can you forgive me? You don't have to do that, right? Because that's going to worsen things. But let's say, for example, you made riba and the person found out. Okay. Now you go to them and say, bro, I'm sorry. I was an idiot. I shouldn't have said what I said. Please forgive me. Do you forgive me? Can I do anything for you, for example, that you forgive me, right? But so you can't just go around killing people, then do good deeds, right? Okay. حدثنا سليمان بن حرب قال حدثنا وهيب بن خالد عن ابن شبرمة قال سمعت أبا زرعة عن أبي هريرة قال قيل يا رسول الله من أبر قال أمك قال ثم من قال أمك ثم من قال أمك قال ثم من قال أباك. Right? So the same hadith from a totally different chain, where the same meaning. That who should I be good to? Who should I focus my efforts on like that? And he said, your mother. And then he said, who? Then your mother. And then he said, who? Then your mother. And then he said, who? Then your father. Okay. So I remember being in a situation like that. My dad was like, I haven't seen you. So yeah, I'm going to mama's house. Like, oh, okay, sorry. Right? It's like, you're not a priority. Mama's a priority, right? And so it's totally fine to fall short of something if you put something else that's a priority ahead of them. Totally fine. Not a problem. Right? Not a problem. The problem is when you get your priorities wrong. That's a problem. When your priorities are wrong. Right? Why didn't Uwais al-Qarani, why didn't he go and see the Prophet ﷺ, the last messenger of Allah? You could have been a Sahabi. You could have seen the Prophet ﷺ. You could have prayed behind him. Why didn't you go? I was being good to my mother. So why did you miss out on that really important thing? Because something else was a priority. So the fiqh al-awlawiyat, knowing your priorities is unbelievably important. Unbelievably important. Because you can't do everything. حدثنا بشر بن محمد قال أخبرنا عبد الله قال أخبرنا يحيى بن أيوب قال حدثنا أبو زرعة أن أبي هريرة أتى رجل نبي الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال ما تأمرني قال بر أمك ثم عاد فقال بر أمك ثم عاد فقال بر أمك ثم عاد الرابعة فقال بر أمك ثم عاد الخامسة فقال بر أباك. Okay, so another version of the same hadith mentions not 3, but 4 times that he asks, what should I do? And he says, be good to your mother, 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 be good to your father. باب بر والديه وإن ظلما. We read this hadith, right? So that Ibn Abbas said, not a single Muslim who has 2 Muslim parents enters the morning muhtasiban. He says, I'm going to deal with this and deal with them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be kind for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِلَّا فَتَحَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بَابَيْنِ يعني من الجنة, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens 2 doors for him of Jannah. وَإِن كَانَ وَاحِدًا فَوَاحِدَةٌ. If he has 1 parent, then it is 1 door. وَإِنْ أَغْضَبَ أَحَدُهُمَا لَمْ يَرْضَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ حَتَّى يَرْضَى عَنْهُ. And so if he annoys one of them in something wrong, right, as opposed to annoying them in something right. I'm really upset that you're growing a beard. Okay, I'm sorry. Can I trim it in a certain way? Like, no, I just want you to shave your beard off. Like, I really don't like the fact that you have a beard. It looks ugly, right? Then, لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obeying a creation in the disobedience of the Creator, right? Why are you praying, right? Why do you keep praying? What's all this wudu stuff? Why do you keep doing that? Right? Why didn't you, why didn't you come to this wedding where there's music and mixing? Like, what's your problem? It's like, well, it's not halal, so I'm not going to do it. Okay. قِيلْ وَإِنْ ظَلَمَاهُ. What if they wrong him? قَالْ وَإِنْ ظَلَمَاهُ. Right? Even if they wrong him. So the key thing is to understand that your parents are just parents and other people of authority, they're just a mask for Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us on Judgment Day, you know, I gave birth to you and you didn't even, you didn't appreciate it. It's like, ya Allah, what do you mean you gave birth to me and I didn't appreciate it? So, well, had you understood who your mother was, right? And none of us can understand who our mothers are. And if you can understand the care and concern that your mother had for you and the pain that she went through and the difficulty and the anguish she has and all these different things, which you can't, right? Then you would have found me there, right? But you didn't, and you didn't appreciate it, and you were rude, etc., or you were careless, whatever, right? And so it's very, very difficult to understand, right, who your mother is. In fact, it's impossible, right? And I remember that particular feeling when my first son was born. It's like, oh, now I know who my dad is. So I guess I can understand who my dad is, right? As a father, I can understand who my dad is, but I can't understand who my mother is, right? Will I ever be able to understand? Maybe in Jannah, inshallah ta'ala, if you make it, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show, like, wow, that's your mother, right? But you can't understand who your mother is, right? You have no understanding, no idea, like, how much she cares, right? Even scenarios where, for example, the mother is in jail or the mother has to leave their kids, right? It happens where something's really off and the mother has to leave. But it's not the same, right? It's a piece of you, right? It's a piece of you. And so you can't, we can't. And so even if your parents are wrong to you, even if they abuse you, yes, we don't obey them in those things, and we don't allow that abuse to continue. It's too much is too much, right? Your parents, for example, unbelievable negativity, criticizing you, you're pathetic, you're this, you're that. It's like, how much can you take? Take, 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 take. Okay, I have to stop. I need to go. I love you, mom. I love you, dad. I have to go. Right? When you get to your limit, you can leave. Right? But otherwise, if it's within your limits, you got to deal with it. And you still have to be nice to them. Right? But one should not get to the point where you're starting to have nightmares, when you're starting to break down emotionally. Right? And so may Allah protect us. Well, it's very difficult. You know, it's very, very difficult. Some relationships. But we have to try our best, and we have to understand this is just a test, and that people have different tests, and Allahu A'lam. Okay. And you know, many people they understand being good to parents, meaning, for example, siding with them in what is wrong, right? Which is not correct, right? Okay, Bab lean al-kalam li speaking gently to one's parents, right? So even if you're going to command them, even if you're going to tell them off, right, you have to speak to them in a nice way, right? Let's say they're doing something that's haram, or they're doing something that is wrong. Okay, you can't shout at them, can't do these things. You have to tell them, say, Mom, Dad, I need to talk, sit down, talk to you. What you said to my brother, what you said to my kids, or what you said to this person, that's wrong, okay? And that's haram. We can't do that. And you know, and then they shout at you. You're quiet, and then start again. Yeah, but we can't do this, and I can't allow this to be done. So being good to your parents does not mean enabling to do their wrong, right? Unfortunately, sometimes it happens. For example, you know, we just manage things in a wrong way, right? Let's say, for example, when you get elderly people, they can't take certain things. So you bring all the kids around. I want to see your kids. I never see my grandchildren. Bring all the grandchildren around. And then actually it's too much for the grandparents. So then parents get really angry or get really upset or really stressed, right? And they do things or say things they shouldn't say. They might get violent. They might say something. Or your kids are dirty. Your kids are, and it's because you're not managing the situation properly, right? So we have to be very careful and just always. So yes, we can take the harm away, right? Take the harm away, but that doesn't mean getting angry with them. That doesn't mean, you know, if you're going to correct them in a nice way, right? حدثنا مسدد قال حدثنا إسماعيل بن إبراهيم قال حدثنا زياد. So I don't know if this is زياد. I don't think this is زياد. والله أعلم. I think it's زياد بن مخراق قال حدثني طيسلة بن مياس قال كنت مع النجدات فأصبت ذنوبا لا أراها إلا من الكبائر. Okay. فذكرت ذلك لابن عمر فقال ما هي. Right. So interesting discussion. He says, this Taysala, I said I was with the ISIS of our time, right? The Khawarij. And the Khawarij, they believe that if you do a major sin, you leave Islam. Okay? So he said, I did some sins and they were major sins. There were some really bad sins. So according to my sect and the group that I was from, or at least coming from, they would say that I'm not even a Muslim, that I left Islam by doing these things, right? Until you enter Islam again, right? فذكرت ذلك لابن عمر. I mentioned that to Ibn Umar, right? فقال ما هي, what did you do? قلت كذا وكذا, I did such and such and such and such. قال ليست هذه من الكبائر هن 9. Said the major sins are 9. الإشراك بالله وقتل نسمة والفرار من الزحف وقذف المحصنة وأكل إلى آخره. So it says associating gods besides Allah, which obviously is shirk and kufr. وقتل نسمة, murder. والفرار من الزحف, running away from the front line in jihad. وقذف المحصنة, and to accuse a chaste woman, right, of being indecent. وأكل الربا, and consuming riba. وأكل مال اليتيم, and consuming the wealth of an orphan. وإلحاد في المسجد. So ilhad, today that means apostasy, but ilhad originally means to go away from something, right? So it says here الإلحاد في اللغة الميل والعدول وفي العرف خروج عن دين وقال راغب إلى آخره. So he says, so he's saying ilhadun fil masjidi, to do a sin in the mosque, i.e. in the Kaaba. So when you do a minor sin in the Kaaba, it's a major sin. وَالَّذِي يَسْتَسْخِرُ, and mocking. So so he says يَسْتَسْخِرُ, which means to, which is sukhriya, which is sarcasm. So he says هَكَذَا فِي النُّسَخ الْمَطْبُوعَةِ. Okay, he says that's what we find in the manuscripts. Okay, فإن صح فالاستخرار من السخرية means being like mocking somebody, like sarcasm, right? Which is possible, right? But it's possible there's something else. Right, and he mentions something else that is possibly al-istihsar, which is to give up hope on a dua. Wallahu a'lam. وَبُكَاء الْوَالِدَيْن مِنَ الْعُقُوقِ, and making your parents cry. قال لابن عمر, and Ibn Umar said, أَفَتَفْرَقُ مِنَ النَّارِ, are you scared of the law of the hellfire? وَتُحِبُّ أَن تَدْخُلَ الْجَنَّةِ, and do you hope to are you scared of hellfire? And would you love to enter paradise? قُلْتُ إِي وَاللَّهِ, right? So today they say أيوة, right? Arabs say أيوة. إي وَاللَّهِ, yes, by Allah. قال أحي والداك, says, are your parents alive? قلت عندي أمي, says, my mother lives with me. قال فوالله لو ألنت لها الكلام, if you said, by Allah, if you would but just be kind to her in the way she speak to her, وأطعمتها, and you fed her food, لتدخلن الجنة ما اجتنبت الكبائر. He says, by Allah, he says, I swear that if you just speak nicely to her and feed her food, that's all you need to do, you will enter paradise, ما اجتنبت الكبائر, as long as you don't engage in the major sins. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive any minor sins. So what does it tell us? It tells us that being good to one's mother and being nice to them, right? So sometimes it's very difficult, again, because again, particularly if your parents get older and you start to treat them as your kids, sometimes it's kind of silly, like but you have to be respectful. So you can speak to a little child in a condescending way. You can't speak to your adult parents who behave like children in a condescending way. You can't do that. You have to be respectful.
Sheikh Farid,
There you go, Bismillah.
in our translation, the translation we were checking, like we're confused at one point when he asked, like, do you want to separate from fire or do you want to enter the fire? So he answered, by Allah, yes. I replied.
Could you say that again one more time, Sister Jahanara?
So when the person did the wrong and somebody asked, do you wish to separate yourself from the fire?
Yeah, that's
or
a
do
mistake.
you want
That's a mistake.
enter the?
That's a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, so they've mistranslated it. So the word usually farq, we say farq means difference. Okay? But the word, this is not farq, this is faraq, which means fear. Okay? So atafraq min an-nar, are you scared of the hellfire? Right? And so this is a very good question to ask somebody. Because somebody said, Sheikh, I did something haram. Am I a believer? You're like, do you believe in Allah? Yeah. Do you believe in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Do you fear hellfire? Yeah. Do you want to go to Jannah? Yeah. You're a believer. What's wrong? Right? And so you're a believer then, obviously. Right? So that's what he says, atafraqu, not a tufer, because they're trying to the other one wouldn't make any sense. It'd be like, it wouldn't make any sense, no. So that's a mistranslation, right? And the other one, yastaskhar, which means to perform magic, practice magic. Allahu alam. That's possible. I don't think he mentions any of those things. Here's another one, istahsara, to do magic, but that again, he says that's based on another manuscript. Yastahsara, to practice magic, right? Which is possible as well, right? But practicing magic, again, is debated. Is it a major sin or is it kufr? Right? It's actually a debate. Allahu alam. But anyway, there seems to be issues with the actual list here. But the point is, regardless of the list, the point is he's saying, how do I solve this problem? Being good to your mother, right? That's the point of the hadith. Allahu alam. The rest of it, Allahu alam. Okay, so then he says, حدثنا أبو نعيم قال حدثنا سفيان عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه قال واخفض لهما جناح الذل من الرحمة. So he mentions قال لا تمتنع من شيء أحباه. Excuse me. So he says, Sufyan narrating from Hisham ibn Urwa, this is Urwa ibn Zubayr, who said, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, lower to them the wing of humility out of mercy, it means make sure you do everything that they like. La tamtani', don't stop yourself from doing anything that they like. Make sure that you do things that they like, right? And make sure you do everything that they like. That's what it means. Inshallah, we'll continue with just one more hadith, inshallah, and then we'll stop. So it says, Babu Jaza al-Walidain. How to recompense your parents. حدثنا قبيصة قال حدثنا سفيان عن سهيل بن أبي صالح عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لا يجزي ولد والده إلا أن يجده مملوكا فيشتريه فيعتقه. Right? The only way that you can pay your parents back is how? So he says the only way that a child could ever recompense his parent is to find him in bondage. You found your parents as slaves and you went and bought them. And by owning your parents become free. You cannot free your parents, right? Your parents are free by the fact that you own them, because you can never actually own your parents, right? فَيَشْتَرِيَهُ فَيُعْتِقَهُ, right? Then by is to set them free. Otherwise, you could never pay them back. حدثنا آدم قال حدثنا شعبة قال حدثنا سعيد بن أبي بردة قال سمعت أبي يحدث أنه شهد ابن عمر رجلا يمانيا يطوف بالبيت حمل أمه وراء ظهره. So he said, Sa'id from Abu Burda, he said, I heard, he said that he saw Ibn Umar seeing a man from Yemen doing tawaf carrying his mother on his back. يقول إني لها بعيرها المذلل إذ عذرت ركابها لم عذر. So he says, I am her domesticated camel. In عذرت, if her feet get scared, I will not get scared, right? Like if she can't walk, I'll walk. ثم قال يا ابن عمر تراني جزيتها. So he then to this man who's carrying his mother on tawaf, right? Do you think so he said, Ibn Umar, do you think I have paid her back? قال لا. He said, Ibn Umar said, no. ولا بزفرة واحدة. Not a single moment of the pains of pregnancy, not a single contraction. You have not paid her back a single contraction. ثم طاف ابن عمر فأتى المقام فصلى ركعتين. And then Ibn Umar came and he did tawaf and he came to the maqam Ibrahim and he prayed 2 rakats. ثم قال يا ابن أبي موسى إن كل ركعتين تكفران ما أمامهما. Right? And then he said to Abu Musa al-Ashari, he said, oh, and then every single time you do 2 rakats, that wipes out sins that are before them or in front of them. Right? But the point is, Ibn Umar is saying, no, Habibi. Right? You think that you've done it, you have not done it. You have not compared. You haven't paid up even one single debt of every single thing that you've done for your mother, and so we have to be very, very careful. Inshallah, we'll continue with the next with hadith number 12. Inshallah, next week. Any immediate questions or queries about the class? Everybody's following for the English, inshallah. I like to read from the Arabic. It's in Arabic. I like to read from it. You can see the chain transmission, etc. And we can read from the PDF, inshallah ta'ala. Is there a sharh? I think so, yeah. Inshallah, I'll share one on the group, inshallah.
If you can mention the number of the hadith when you are going to the next one.
Okay, inshallah. I anticipate that certain time there might be differences, but so we're basically we ended with 11 and we're going to go on to 12 inshallah next week. Inshallah. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك